call roll.
Commissioner Ganger.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner White. Here. Commissioner Orthwine. Mayor Morgan.
Here. All right, this is a workshop meeting to discuss long-term as well as some short-term projects, planning, and concepts. And I thank all of you for showing up. This is wonderful to have such great attendance, particularly late afternoon in the middle of the week and hot May day. So thank you very much for coming. Before we get into what some consider important in terms of our projects, I think first a predicate should be laid, and that is the financial status of the town, because it would be improvident in the extreme to commence any sort of budgeting for projects without first having our finances in order. The town manager has put together a summary of potential projects, those that are discretionary and those that are more of a need, and he's also put forth some budgetary considerations. The town's general fund reserves are around $750,000. That is low for a town of our size. We really should be in the $1.5 to $2 million range. Much of that decrease is due to the litigation that we've been subjected to. We have budgeted for next year about $800,000 for legal fees. Now the good thing is those fees are budgeted. That is, they are part of the budget. We're not borrowing money or taking money from reserves to cover it. But the reserves were depleted initially, and they are not at, in my opinion, a size that we can live with. The manager has proposed an increase in the millage rate to 4.5, a rate which would bring in approximately $800,000 a year in revenue for the town, essentially covering those legal fees, but would go toward essentially some spending, but reserve building. And within fairly short order, our reserves would be solid and we would be balanced. I have reviewed, and I think the other commissioners have reviewed, the millage rates of other municipalities in the town, or excuse me, in the county. And if you look at them, what you'll find is that Gulfstream is way below other towns. And in fact, even with a 4.5 millage rate, we would be low in comparison to most towns. In fact, almost all towns. Not all, but almost all in the county. So it is something we need to consider. It's something you need to consider, and I'm glad you're here to listen to me to mention it to you, so that you can consider it and give us your opinions on it as well. Our water utility fund reserves are also about $750,000. They should be higher, but they're on solid footing. We've taken in-house much of our water utility maintenance. We've contracted out. By taking it in-house, we have saved a fair amount of money and probably contribute toward these reserves $150,000 or so per year. So you can see that over time we will fill up that water reserve. And that water reserve is very important because you'll hear today one of the most pressing problems facing this town is the age of our water lines. So with that said, let's turn to some of the projects, whether they are urgent, whether they are something we need to consider in the short term, or whether they're just long-term goals and aspirations. Mr. Thrasher put together a summary of some of those, and I think that on the very top of the list would have to be the consideration of two things. One is the condition of our water lines and what steps might be taken to address breaks in water lines, because when they occur, the cost is very high. The other is consideration of a barrier island fire and EMS special district. We've discussed this at the commission level on a number of occasions. Right now we get great service at a good price from Delray Beach. Delray Beach has considered at times opting out of that, stopping it, and joining the county. If that were to happen and we had to join the county for those services, our millage rates would go up by about 3.5%, a little less than that. So it would be very costly. Those are the two items that I think need to be addressed in the long term. The reserves of the water fund will help us address any short-term, small, immediate breaks in water lines. And we also have the option of borrowing money or floating a bond if necessary to pay for any major or large breaks. The Barrier Island issue is one that the town has allocated money to 3 years ago for a study to be done in conjunction with other municipalities. I believe the budget was about $80,000 for a study of the viability of the Barrier Island municipalities, 4, 5, or 6 of them joining together to provide our own service. That has never been done, and I believe that we should direct the town manager to at least speak with the town managers of the other involved municipalities to see if there is an interest in joining us in evaluating, doing a study on the viability of taking that fire and EMS onto the Barrier Island. I don't know if it's viable or not, but we won't know unless a study is done. And we won't do the study unless the other towns contribute to it. And we won't know that until Mr. Thrasher talks to the other town managers. Any comments from the commission?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a little bit more background on this fire EMS. Just so you understand that City Delray Beach, and at our last meeting was the first time we heard, is re-exploring turning over their fire capability, fire EMS capability to the county. There are people who are quite for that, and there are people who are very much against it. It will be a rather contentious process to decide whether or not they want to make that shift. It's a profound shift because if you turn over your fire to the county, and as we know, other municipalities are looking at turning over their police to the county, to the sheriff, you could argue then maybe your library should go to the county, and then maybe your parks and recreation should go to the county, and what's left. So for a lot of people, this looks to be a rather seminal event that Delray is going through. Delray provides service to us and provides service to Highland Beach. There is a station on the Barrier Island in Delray, and it's the only station on the Barrier Island until you get all the way up to Manalapan. Manalapan has the building where their fire is located, but they share their service with South Palm Beach, that condo community along A1A. They are not necessarily very pleased with that. It's a very costly process because they pay $3.46 millage, $3.46 millage for that service.
Yes.
Yes. So remember, our millage for the total town is recommended to be $4.50. So if you were paying the $3.46 on top of that, you could see that would have a meaningful impact on the cost of providing an essential service, and to many people in town, the most essential service, because if EMS isn't there for you, it's a very perilous situation. So this evaluation is not likely to go in a straight line. There are permutations that go in every direction. Without a question, there will be input from not just the Barrier Island communities, but the service providers of Delray and Boynton Beach, and possibly even Manalapan. So it's a big jigsaw puzzle that has to be very carefully put together. And so it absolutely has to start with a study. It has to be done very professionally. And there are all kinds of permutations, such as just this week, the Florida Supreme Court basically wrote a very important decision saying that you can now have a fire assessment district, assessing for fire service just the way we assessed for the undergrounding project. And imagine trying to put that puzzle together and doing it shared with other communities. Good news is that Ocean Ridge has an ex-fire station. They had a fire station. It is no longer being used, but could be used if we decided that we want to have something on the barrier island, and we wanted to have it in Ocean Ridge. And Ocean Ridge Fire is just about as far from Gulfstream as the Andrews Station in Delray. So we have some confidence that we ought to be able to come up with some system that keeps the service levels where they are, but inevitably probably going to cost us more money no matter what. But that's a price I think we're all willing to pay, because without good fire service, we're pretty bad shape. So,
But the key is to get a study first, and Gulfstream's not going to fund the study entirely. So unless we can get the other municipalities involved and to contribute to it, I don't believe this project will move forward, at least not at this point in time. So I would like, and I'm sure that I have to ask that we all would be in agreement that Mr. Thrasher should contact the other municipalities. Let's see if there's some interest in doing this. Because as Bob explained, it is very important to not just us, but all the other towns on the island.
What happened 3 years ago after we gave them money? Did they ever respond to?
We didn't give money.
Well, no, I mean, when we appropriate the money.
That was a project that was handled by Mayor Cook. Managers were not involved. And I think that it first is an operational review and decision, and then obviously and ultimately it's a policy decision by each commission. But managers may be able to buy in easier to the concept from an operational standpoint more easily than policymakers at the very top end, because it's on the outside and on the front view of it. It looks difficult, looks impossible, looks expensive, and it may prove to be that, and so policymakers are probably cautious, more cautious than managers.
one good thing we have going for us is that the review of turning over Delray to the Palm Beach County Fire Rescue is an open process. And I sat through countless hours last year when they did their first review. So there's a lot of information that's already out there that is being dusted off and reconsidered. And so we get a bit of a head start by understanding the complexities and by, as well, understanding the costs. You have something to compare it to. Right now, our cost of providing fire service through Delray is quite good. I mean, we think we get fair value for what we invest.
Okay. Let's move on to any other topics that other commissioners would like to address. I mentioned the water line project, which is not a project, it's actually a response to emergencies. And perhaps before we move on to any other discussion, Bill, you could just summarize for the residents who are here, the people in attendance, what the approach is with respect to water line risks and funding of repairs.
Okay. Generally speaking.
Generally speaking.
We have an inventory of our piping system, water distribution system within the town, and they are in the ages between 50 and 80 years old. There is a possibility at any time that these pipes can begin leaking, and we experienced that about 3 years ago. It cost us about $1.5 million to repair a rather long section on A1A. We have a value for all of the repairs at $8 million. But not all of those, not all the lines and piping in that $8 million is in the replacement age of 50 to 80 years or 100 years. So we're looking at about $4.8 million of pipes that in the next 10 years or 20 years are going to have to be replaced. So that's the long-term financial responsibility that we're looking at. And so if history holds true, we won't replace all of those pipes all at once. We will replace a very large section, around $1 million, $1.5 million. And that's why I have recommended that our reserves approach $1.5 million. I think it would take care of any real emergency. So I don't know if I answered your
No, that's
question.
good. That's exactly what
Remember, that's a base assumption, that most of Gulfstream is served by Delray water. Some at this end of town comes from Boynton Beach. So again, you got more than one ball up in the air in terms of who is your water provider. We all recognize that water is the staff of life for people living in South Florida. We either move it out or move it in. And so Delray Beach is also going through a rather lengthy and complex assessment of their long-term water production, water capability. And remind yourself that with rising sea levels, our aquifers are getting more and more saline. So the water has to come farther away to the west. So I would say unequivocally that water will be an issue that Gulfstream and any of the barrier island towns are going to have to deal with soon, and certainly in the near future. So I think what the town manager is proposing is prudent, and if we get lucky and we can continue to build our reserves, we're okay on the pipes. Whether or not we're going to be okay on the quality and quantity of potable water remains to be seen. And I would submit that as we think about our future budgets and how we invest our money, that we're probably going to either choose to or be forced to consider gray water, that is treated wastewater, for irrigation in this town, because 80 to 85% of the water we use in Gulfstream is for landscaping or pools, non-potable, not even showers. So only a small portion of the water we use, we drink. And so in the future, we may very well have to be hooked up to either the Delray or the Boynton line that provides treated water to be used exclusively for landscaping purposes. That could buy us decades of good potable water.
Bob, doesn't that require another water main?
Yes, it does. It requires.
And it's a very costly project.
It is a costly project. I believe it's not the largest main, but it's at least an 8-inch. But the current main terminates on Andrews Avenue at George Bush.
Yeah.
So from the point of view, from a practical point of view, a good engineer could figure out a way to get, not for everybody, but if we could just get it coming up A1A and used for landscaping up on the ridge, might be helpful.
All the distribution lines that residents have would have to be duplicated because you wouldn't be mixing.
That's right, you don't mix them. Yeah, you'd have to.
And I probably misspoke. We have a primary contract with Delray Beach, and they are our water provider. And we just have distribution lines here that we own and maintain. And so what I was referring to had nothing to do with the operation of Delray, just simply in our town boundaries, the distribution lines. We do have a secondary source, but it's a backup system from Boynton Beach, that if the water pressure from Delray Beach, for whatever reason, goes below 45 PSI, those valves open up and provide water. So our contract for water, we don't produce water, we buy water, and that primary contract is from Delray.
Joan is a long-term commissioner and mayor. us have seen these issues come up time and time again. And I think we would benefit from your observations and comments, not only about the issues we've already discussed, but some future ones.
No, I think one of the biggest one is the water main and also water, where we're gonna get our water. The golf club has water they bring over underneath, they have their own plant, and they use the reclaimed water, but I think that in the future, we're gonna have to spend money long-term. I mean, to do what Bob said, but it's gonna be very expensive. We have not been challenged by those. We haven't been up against, you know, the wall with no water.
Mhm.
And as everything gets developed more and more, you're going to have to do something.
Mhm.
So, but that's 10 years down the road. I mean, it's not tomorrow.
No, it's not tomorrow, but I think it's a heads up to say
Yeah.
that we can't ignore, and for the, if there are studies that are required, or things that we could be doing now, so when the time comes, we're ready to do something, but that's probably something that the city manager should be charged with doing and reporting periodically to the commission in terms of, you know, where are we in that process? And then stay on top of issues that come. An example being that Manalapan may have made an error, but they put in a reverse osmosis plant to serve their community, and it's turned out not to have been a wise decision. And they'd love to sell it. If anybody wants to buy a water plant, there's one up in Manalapan that you can have. These decisions, you make one of these decisions, it's a long-term decision. You can't go back and change your mind. I think we're just trying to make the point that we can't put together a long-term plan without taking into account our water needs.
And that's the point of this, really, is to educate everyone on these potential future large expenditures that are hovering out there. May come to be, maybe not, maybe soon, maybe later. But the more we talk about it, the more we're aware of it, the more we can plan and budget and raise our reserves as a result.
I think raising the reserves is going to be huge. I think we've always counted on reserves to not borrow money in the past, and so as we needed to when we replaced the water main, we used our reserve. You know, we went into it, we had plenty of money to do it. I think it's going to be more of a challenge going forward. Property values are going up, so that's a good thing, because it's going to cost a lot of money.
It is gonna cost a lot of money.
And the pipes are old.
They are all done.
Is the source that Delray gets the raw water from, is that the Floridan aquifer?
Yes,
The same one?
various aquifers, yes.
So, according to the study, that's the one that they were looking into Gulf Stream using.
Mhm.
But if it's a commodity that, what would be the advantage if we're looking at the same source? I mean, the depletion would be the same, whether we piggybacked onto Delray or made our own plan.
Well, I
if we're
think
looking
that,
at the same
yeah,
source.
the point there is that if you allocate more, if you make sure that you've covered all your potable water use, there is in the system, the wastewater, it can be used for things that don't need drinking water quality. And up and down Andrews and all that general area, they're all on it now. They use it for, and it's supposed to be less expensive. I think what it is turned out to be is it is about the same as potable water used to be, and the price of potable water has gone up. But then again, that's life in the big time.
But you have to fund your debt service, so
Yeah.
if you take away from one, you gotta make it up somewhere.
Yeah.
And that debt service just keeps on marching.
There are a number of other things to discuss. Don or Tom, any?
No, in my house in Plaza Soleil, I have the ability to switch on to get the aquifer, to get the pumps right. And I know that there are other homes in Plaza Soleil that also can hook
Yep.
directly up to the aquifer, to well water.
There are quite a few wells in Gulfstream. A not terribly well-known fact, but there are quite a few wells in Gulfstream. And of course, the golf courses are almost exclusively using aquifer water. which has to be treated, by the way. And again, as the water becomes more saline, it requires more treatment and therefore more expense, even for the golf courses. You can't just put, salty water on a golf course and expect to have greens. So it's a problem we all face. It is not something that's unique to Gulfstream by any stretch of the imagination. It's just something we all have to be aware of and make sure that when we make long-term decisions, that we don't make the kind of decision I'm afraid that Manalapan made, which, they thought they were doing the right thing and it turned out not been appropriate. It may turn out to be sometime in the future, but it isn't now.
Another couple projects that are more discretionary, but needed nonetheless, and have been bandied about over the years, is to enlarge the town hall. As you know, it's fairly cramped here. It is workable, but there is room to expand, and it's something that should be considered. Perhaps more important is the maintenance building behind us is not in great repair. It's below grade. It has taken over our water maintenance, so there's more equipment, there's more parts. The first time I visited it yesterday, and I encourage everyone to go look at it. We should have a field trip. It's something that needs to be considered as well. I know that, and I want to turn it over to the public, but I know, Bob, you've put a lot of time and thought into these matters, and maybe you want to just touch on a few.
Well, I'll just pick up where you left off on the, obviously, you first need, you had to start with what do we want to be, how patient are we to get there, and what might we have to change, either because of government mandates. For instance, the government might mandate at some point in time the elimination of septic tanks. That would be a biggie. That would cost this town a great deal of money. But it's a possibility. When you get to the direction that you want to go, you need an organization to get you there. And I think what the town manager is talking about with respect to this building and the maintenance facility is we have taken in 2 new employees, actually 1 new employee, for the water maintenance, and that has turned out to be a good investment. We will forever need space for our equipment, and in time we may need more equipment and therefore more space to store it. And I think the mayor is absolutely right. If you have 5 extra minutes, take a walk back there and you see that's a 1930s facility in a 2015 town. So I sincerely believe we need to go through the process that says what is critical for us to have, what kinds of people do we have to do those critical tasks, and then where are they going to do their work. And we all know that our records retention, record keeping, I mean, we're virtually out of space for the people that we have now who are dealing with public records. We need space for that activity. We may in time choose to take in building, have our own little building department. When something is happening in this town that requires a building permit, we used to go to the county and now we go to Delray. Delray has let people go, and the building department in Delray is so backlogged that if you have a relatively simple thing, it might take you weeks or months to get a permit. Should we take that function in to the town and have a professional or professionals who perform that function and even do code enforcement? Right now, between the police department and Mr. Thrasher and everything else, code enforcement is kind of the hardest thing to wrap your mind around, because code enforcement for building has to be done every day. So I think in order, we ought to make sure we know what is it we want people to do. Should we be farming some stuff out or bringing it in? And then determine, do we have the space for those people to work efficiently? And then in some cases I think that the base elevation of the barn has got to be foot. Is it 6 feet?
somewhere in that range.
Yeah, okay. So, in my opinion, we should be thinking about a thoughtfully considered total redo of that facility, providing space for growth, but also space for excellence, so that people can work in a clean environment, that they can get the job done, and not flood out in the next 100-year storm.
Bob, let me just interject, so that we can put it in perspective. The town hall expansion was studied back in 2012, and it was estimated it would be a $200,000 cost. The town manager was suggesting, and Bob mentioned it, that we would have a building permit and inspection office here, do our code enforcement here, take that away from Delray, and derive income from that. Bill, would that be sufficient over a relatively short period of time to pay for the expansion?
Well, I think the answer to the question is yes. Your cost we're talking about 600 square foot, build out additional space for offices, $200,000, but you will also need to have, allocation for labor and things of this nature. In a very hot year, we turned over to Delray approximately $550,000. That was part of their budget document that indicated that information.
Did that include 4001?
It included
It did include specs, I know that.
20, yeah,
Yeah.
and it may have included part of 4001. So that was a hot year. A low year might be $200,000 in possible revenue. But in regards to efficiency, the turnover time for our contractors, which is important from a business standpoint, it most likely would be much faster. And then also the ability for a permit department to handle code enforcement. They know what the permit's all about, they know what they've issued, they know what to expect. And that is a very enticing thing for a manager, particularly in times that we have experienced in the last 24 months. So,
How much would would you estimate that additional labor cost to
I
be,
would
including
estimate
benefits?
that each person would have a range of $60,000 to $75,000 at the high end, and at the low end, $45,000 to $50,000. That's loaded with retirement and so on. I believe that it would could require 2 people. And so, if that were the case, you probably would have a return on investment. I'm just talking off the top of my head, my
Sure.
figures.
That's why it's a
about
workshop.
3 to 4 years with that low end possible.
Payback within that period of time?
Yes, labor at 150, revenue at low end 200,000, 50,000 a year, net revenues, $200,000 expenditure, so you recover the cost of the expansion in approximately 4 years. Those numbers hold true.
Is there any possibility that we could share that function with another municipality and they pay part of the freight?
Well, anything is possible. You start running into priorities. Whose priority is highest, and how do you control and allocate resources? So I personally see it to be something that's in-house, exclusively in-house. I could be wrong.
I like that project. Pays for itself and then pushes money back into reserves. At least it needs to be looked into, it seems to me, and it needs to be updated. That will be a 2012 evaluation of that project.
Actually, that cost estimate is current. I asked one of our,
Plus it's 2012.
And that's when it was originally looked at, the drawings, but then I had the drawings given to,
So Mal?
yes,
Yeah.
and they gave me a current estimate ballpark, and I included that in my documentation.
Now, how about the barn, as Mr.
Same-
Cantor calls it?
Same thing. The barn includes, the concept of the barn is the concept of the fire station. Potential, proposed, possible fire station, which whether you engage a real fire department in this fire station is yet to be determined. But the space that we're talking about also includes the police department. The police department has several vehicles back there, and I really invite anybody who would like me to open up the doors back there and look at it. It is absolutely a miracle that there's so much stuff inside. But the police department has a golf cart, a four-wheeler, they have all types of individual equipment. They also have their files, they have confiscated equipment or confiscated goods which have to be isolated and protected. So this building, which now estimated could be built for $800,000, I believe, would take care of the utility department, not only equipment and hand tools and inventory of brass fittings and so on, everything that you need to repair a line out in the field. It also would provide isolated space for the police department. And it would also provide room for a hurricane. During a hurricane event, the police department and myself live here. We don't leave the island unless there's a breach of water over the crest here at Sea Road. Has to be a material breach. But we live here, we cook here, we wash here, we shower here, and it's all back there in that room. We move everything out. We have barbecue grills, cookers. So the project is identified as a fire station, and that's only because, in my opinion, it would be wise to potentially provide that space for housing a fire engine. That could be, whether we go that way or not, that space is available. But through economies of scale, you would build it all. The fire station, the spaces for the police department, the spaces for hurricane, the spaces for maintenance. Because to actually stop at the expansion and exclude the room for the fire station, empty space, would be more costly in the long run. If we were to build it, obviously, this year, it would cost you something greater than that in 5 or 10 years out. Ultimately, that is.
We haven't even discussed considered putting a fire station here in Gulfstream. That's
Well,
not
no,
the direction that we're heading. Why wouldn't we just make the building smaller, have that space available and reduce the cost? Because this one doesn't pay for itself. This is just money
This does not pay for
that
itself.
we're spending.
That is an option. That's just my idea. I think that space is a valuable thing, and even if the building, which is not a high-end type of construction, that space can be utilized in some form or fashion at its construction in some other form than just a fire station. But it's space, and it is the plan that an architect developed for us, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Are there federal or state subsidies for building a fire station?
I'm sure, I'm not sure that we qualify. Our per capita income kills us on every type of,
But for fire, I think there may be a point of difference.
maybe.
Reason I ask is
don't
if
answer. I don't know.
you're gonna get any kind of subsidies, you absolutely have to bring it up above 7 feet.
Oh,
uh,
there's no question about that. But whether you want to stop at that fire station or stop before the fire, Doesn't matter to me. I'm looking at the police department, I'm looking at the maintenance department, and I know how I lived during the hurricane.
I smelled you, so I know how you live.
You're absolutely correct, and, but we were dedicated, so, there is a great need there. There is a great need, and I compliment the police department for being so, patient, cooperative, and particularly the maintenance people. When I walk out there and I see how they inventory things and keep things so precise and utilize every little square inch, I'm amazed. I wish I had that capability. I'm just not that nice really in space.
Well, I think we would all agree that it's something that needs to be considered. And I like your idea of building it in a modular fashion where you build what you absolutely have to have and have space to expand it as needed for another use, if another use develops. But you can't have our town essentially is worth about $1 billion if you just take the property value. And $1 billion town with a barn in the back that chickens wouldn't live in probably says we're due, that we really need to bring the infrastructure up. And I can tell you, because I was around then, through my family at least, that when this building was built, it was somewhat contentious. People say, why do you need such a fancy building? Well, this building has served us remarkably well for a long period of time. And I think that the building in the back is due. It's time to at least think through what's the best way to do that.
I agree. We should look into it again, with a number of different options. Let's at least find out what some budgetary numbers, what it would cost, what would be involved. I know you've got some other things to talk. I think those are the major issues that I saw. I don't know about Tom, Don, or Joan, any other projects, issues? Money.
Long-term planning, but a lot of things, you need to plan. So you need to get your reserves up and use your tax money wisely.
I would like to get the public to comment, but I'd like you to follow up on a few other things, because I know you've put so much time into this and have a number of thoughts.
Well, actually, I think this is a good time to start with the public, because there is on the wish list, and by the way, we call it a wish, want, need list, because some of these things you wish you had, but you don't absolutely need them. Other things you absolutely need. And I think obviously Gulfstream will always go for need first. What is it, something we absolutely have to have, and then move accordingly. With respect to the infrastructure of the town, there was a proposal or a suggestion in one of these documents that Bill wrote of widening at least one of our roads, which is not terribly expensive, but it leads you to the question, because you're all here, and thinking about the infrastructure in your neighborhood. Now, our what was it, Old School Road?
It was a total of Gulfstream, Polo, Old School, Lakeview, and Banyan.
Mm-hmm. Of actually widening the road.
2-foot widening of those roads with an estimated cost of $300,000.
Okay. You all, one of those roads probably is something that you travel all the time. And to the extent that that sounds like something you really would like for us to do, this is the time to so state. Or other things that we should be doing. I know that the issue of moving water off of land is going to come up, because it has since this town was built in 1925. And we have a high ridge and a low area, and water will always go in the direction that gravity wants it to go. And so there are areas of the town that flood frequently, and we try and stay on top of that. But Mother Nature is not our friend here, because not only is sea level rising, but groundwater level is rising too. So the water is percolating up from beneath whenever there's a flood event, or a rain event, or a high tide. So I'm going to shut up. In the course of bringing up things, maybe the infrastructure thing is a relatively easy place to start, because you experience problems, and you ought to be the first to tell us that we should be thinking about your street or.
Well, I assume we wouldn't have such a big turnout unless there were some comments to be made.
Yeah.
So why don't we turn it over now, and this is not gonna be like a commission meeting where you're sworn in and you go to the podium to speak. You may, particularly if we can't hear you very well, but show of hands of anybody who would like to speak. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, half a dozen. Okay. Why don't we start, Patsy, Civic Association.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
What I really wanted to talk about is dunes and the seawalls. I'm concerned that our dunes are being, with the invasives, are being really compromised. And whether there should be some sort of a public-private partnership to deal with the dunes. Because I know, my understanding is the town doesn't own the dunes, but if you consider it, if we had a major storm and the biggest impact is on all of us, if the dunes are weak or seawalls are weak. And I would think it'd be the town's responsibility to figure out how to look at this as a really serious issue.
I mean, seawalls along
Yes,
intercoastal homes?
yes,
Seawalls
Well, there was
on the
actually-
coastal homes
yes.
or on the ocean?
No. Well, yeah, they have seawalls, but then, and then the intercoastal, don't they have seawalls? What do they have?
Yeah, but that, every
Yeah,
private home
private
takes
pays
care
for
of their own.
I know, but I don't know who's overseeing it and making sure that they really are doing that. And there was, up in Manalapan, there was a major issue going on up there.
That was on the ocean.
Correct. But I'm just curious whether there is some sort of, an
Yeah, some code enforcer to make sure your seawalls are.
well,
If your seawalls are not stable, any homeowner in this town, I would hope that they would shore them up pretty quickly, or else they're gonna lose their seawall into the intercoastal. I don't know if the town would wanna take on,
I don't think so, at least with respect to the intercoastal.
yeah.
If you start to lose seawall, you start to lose your yard.
right,
And
I
it
know, I
becomes
understand
evident rather quickly.
And then your property becomes less valuable, and I don't know very many people that want that.
well, just the intrusion of water coming from either side. And then with the dunes, with the invasives, the dunes really need to be, I think there needs to be public awareness of the issue. And whether we could create some sort of.
That will be done, as you probably know. All the communities are beginning to wake up to the fact that the dunes are really their best line of defense. The fact that the dunes are in different shape depending on where you happen to live, and they're private property, because remember, we do not have any public access to the beach except right here, up here on Sea Road. And therefore, the maintenance of the dunes is you maintain your own property. You own, technically, to the mean high water mark, and you're responsible for taking care of the dune. And you darn well better, because it is your line of defense. The question you raise about seawalls on the ocean and even the dunes, the town of Palm Beach is finally woken up to the fact that they had no inventory of the shape of their seawalls on the ocean. And they did a big study, and they found there were literally miles of seawalls that were put in the 20s and are virtually gone. The rebar is shot, and so the town did take on that project at a considerable cost. I don't think we're anywhere near that, but I don't disagree with you that taking an inventory, having a professional walk from one end of town to the other, and just basically saying, are we vulnerable? And is there anything we could or should do? And use that with the owner of that property. I don't really, I hope that the city doesn't have to take care of it, but
Actually, by state statute, you would not be able to expend public funds for private purposes.
That's true.
It would be a special
That's-
assessment for the
that's-
beach owners.
That's true, there would be some form of special taxing district or whatever would need to be done. But nonetheless, cities are recognizing that there is an obligation, because if the private owner doesn't do what they should be doing and puts the people west of it in a vulnerable situation, that's not good. So I don't disagree with you. I think what we're talking about probably is a relatively simple study of somebody literally walking 2 miles and checking off property by property. Property lines are well defined, property by property. Are we missing something? Are any of our dunes vulnerable? And the answer is probably not, because of the ridge. The ridge is probably, will save us from, by anything but a catastrophic storm surge.
I don't know whether land use is a topic for now, or, I'm not quite, is long-range planning, this meeting is really more on cost projects that are gonna cost, or are we talking about long-range planning in terms of what Gulfstream is gonna look like in 10, 15, 20 years?
No, it's budgetary considerations
Okay.
for projects.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Nancy. Who else would like to speak? Sir?
Thank you. I'm Alan Larson with my wife Carol. We're new residents to your community. We've lived here full-time for 4 or 5 months. We live on Old School Road. Of course, in our decision to determine where we wanted to live, we were quite taken by a lot of the natural amenities here and the things you've done to keep this town as pretty as it is. Your street signs, the stop signs, the lights that are to come are all things that are noteworthy and to be commended and that affected our decision. I think I am a supporter of doing something more with the roads, because I think one of the negatives, in spite of these positives, that we noticed as we drove along are the ditches in front of many homes, particularly on the wet end of town, because the roads are quite narrow, and as trucks traverse for the renovation that we're going to continue to see here, I think that could be eliminated or mitigated to a large degree if you added a foot or two to some of these roads. Gulfstream Road, I know, is narrow, that connector on Old School Road, and I haven't done an inventory, but those of you that have been here longer could cite other spots too. So I would encourage, for the sake of the attractiveness of the community, that we budget going forward money to widen these roads, not in a major way, but we did have a discussion with my neighbor. I did with my neighbor. We were willing, actually, I was willing to fund the part down by our house, and would continue to be willing to do that. But I
Let me
think,
write that down.
well, I take great satisfaction that this isn't being recorded. So.
Oh, it is.
So in any case, I would suggest that our roads could stand from some upgrading in places, and we hope that you take that into account.
Thank you, Ms. Larson, and welcome. Glad you could join us in our wonderful little town of Gulfstream.
We're happy to be
Mr.
here.
Doctor?
Yeah. Just a couple of points. I think 4.5 is not gonna be enough. I think this town's been operating pretty frugally for many, many years, and I feel that you might have to look at a higher number, sadly, as that might be. I also 100% support Mr. Larson in this case. When I drive around, I'm embarrassed for our town when I see all those Mickey Mouse little sticks on everybody's property. They're all different. And then when the trucks come through, when it's wet, it just looks terrible, and that's not what this town should be. I didn't know there could be a solution, but when I read about the 2-foot strip, that seems to make some sense. And 300 grand probably, to me, sounds like a good, I don't know that it would impact where I live necessarily, but up in that north end and the northwest, it's just terrible for those folks up there. So I do think we're gonna have to spend some more money, and I don't think 4.5 is probably gonna be enough, in my opinion.
Well,
I know that impacts all of us.
Well, why do you not think it would be, and what would you
Well,
suggest?
because I really think the undergrounding, the pipes, that's a big thing, and people are all saying, well, that's 10 years from now, but, you know, lots of us are gonna be here 10 years from now, we're gonna have to, now, I've been here 23 years in this town, and boy, look at that. 10 years isn't that far from now, and that's a big, big, big project. And I don't know, I haven't looked at the numbers, but $1 billion of property, 1 mil is an extra million, right, Bob?
Yeah, remember, that's the market value of the property.
Right.
That's-
And I remember in 08, 09, it went down,
Yeah,
of course, but right now you said it's $1
yeah.
billion.
Around close to 900,000.
Close to 900, so that's 900,000.
Mhm.
Going from 3.9 to 4.5 is 60 basis points, right? 0.6 mil.
Yeah.
What are you really raising? 60% of 900 grand. It's 500,000. I think the figures that I'm saying, we need to raise more money. That's it. I just don't think 4.5 is enough. Maybe it is the next year, but I think the town at 3.4 the year before was too low. And I know it impacts everybody, but I just think it's something we should get used to. Our numbers, our total number in Gulfstream is 18.5. I have the figures, right?
Mhm.
Most towns are in the low 20s. So we've been, I think, getting away with a little bit of a free ride maybe. And I didn't know anything about the barn. I didn't know anything about the 200 grand for this. And the $8 million for those pipes is huge. And then if we get hit with a septic change 5 years from now, who knows what that could cost? I imagine $10 million, more, who knows? But anyway, 2 points. I love the idea of the north end, and I think I would support and a lot of people paying higher taxes to make this town a little bit better.
I appreciate the thought, because up to this point, we've been moving incrementally, and obviously, we have always tried to be frugal. It's everybody's money, we're all part and parcel of this, and we don't like to make tax increase decisions late. But I've heard that from others as well, that we face a lot of potentially large expenditures, and it's not really if they will occur, it's when. And with our reserves being as they are at about 750,000, the higher rate it would be indicated. So I think we'll take it under consideration. Yes. Yes, sir.
I won't use the microphone unless I need to for recording.
Please.
Okay, I won't. Thanks.
I was gonna say it was okay, so.
I thought it was okay, but,
But you don't have to do the minutes.
Hello everyone, my name is Richard Beans. I've been a resident at Gulfstream since 2008. 3 things I just want to bring up. One, I completely agree with the roads being extended. One of the things that the roads that, I don't think anyone specifically addresses Lakeview. We have Gulf Road down at the end, but you cannot make a left-hand turn and go north from that. So anyone who lives south of Lakeview in that part of town has to go out through Lakeview. And that road on the edges has gotten really bad, at least the part between Gulfstream Road and A1A. So if you've ever tried to exit the town when all the Gulfstream moms are coming in to pick up the kids, you have to drive on the edge of off-road a little bit on your right tire. So I think that road specifically needs to be improved. 2 other things that haven't been mentioned, and I just want to bring the conversation up. One is our cell phone reception in the town. We're in this technology age, and I know a couple years ago there were some residents looking into how to improve the cell phone reception, but nothing, to my knowledge, has come of that. And I think that's an issue that's not going to go away anytime soon. And we're going to have it's going to become a bigger issue as we have more and more technology coming into play. And then the second issue is as a runner, I don't understand why Gulfstream kind of skipped out on having a sidewalk. And if you're running up and down A1A, south of us has a sidewalk, and north of us has a sidewalk, but Gulfstream, you just sort of have to run off-road for a few miles that you run through the town. And that strip of A1A can be dangerous. When you're running, there's a couple parts where you cannot be on off-road. You sort of have to just wait for traffic to stop and then go onto the street. So I see it as a potential hazard. I know we had a fatality a few months ago for an employee at the B&T that was trying to cross the road. Not saying that having a sidewalk would have prevented that, but at least it would have created a larger buffer for anyone who's traveling up and down the A1A. So I haven't heard that conversation today, so I just wanted to put those
Well, thank you,
issues forward.
Richard. I can address the cell phone one, because we studied it rather intently, contacted a number of providers, service providers, and it cannot be done in the town of Gulfstream. We don't have the available land for it. We don't have any location where it would fit. You have to have 50 feet in circumference around a tower, even though some towers are now being made smaller and somewhat more attractive. They're still towers, so they would be limited really to the Little Club golf course or Black Barn. And it doesn't make sense to tie up in a long-term lease a sub tower on this property. So we did look into it, and very recently, just within the last 5 or 6 months.
Wasn't there a booster you could get from your telephone provider that you can put in your house to give you more result? I think. Did you
Yes,
remember
there
that?
is,
Yeah, there
and
is.
we put
I know
2
people-
of them in and it didn't work.
Oh, really?
Well,
They promise it'll work.
Put it together.
AT&T's, it wouldn't work?
I think, every one of your suggestions is a good one. I particularly sympathize with anyone running on A1A, but you should be aware that about a decade before, there was a move to physically widen A1A, which required taking down a lot of the Australian pines, or at least their root system, which would kill them anyway. And there was, FDOT was gonna be pretty rigorous on us. They wanted a swale, and actually the swale was actually in, at the cottage, it was in my cottage. In other words, if they designed this thing, they didn't bother to figure out who's there or what's there. And to his credit, Mayor Cope just absolutely said, no, this is a quiet little town, and, we did widen, what was it, 3 feet, wherever it could be.
We actually, we didn't do anything. DOT narrowed the travel path on each side by a foot, creating a space on the outside edge of each white line on north and south travel.
But I think that, it's a trade-off, conflicting interests, and the decision was made, let's keep the character of the town paramount. And then, we've got to share the road with bicyclists and obviously share the road with runners as well. And, I don't think the accident at B&T really was caused by something that could have changed. It's terrible weather, and she wasn't paying attention, she had an umbrella. But nonetheless, I think that's one that we're probably going to stay as faithful as we can to the character of the main street that goes through our town. On the cell towers, though, I think that's every 6 months technology changes, and I trust that if anybody sees anything that looks like it might be a breakthrough that would be relevant to the town of Gulfstream, I guarantee you'd have a lot of friends, whoever you are, and we'd have to look at it, whatever it is, and if there were some investment on the part of the town, or some easements, in more likelihood, you'd have to create some easements for attaching this thing to, these things, whatever they are, to trees or poles. Remember, we're gonna lose our poles soon, so, we've lost something to attach. Those are all good suggestions, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I'd love to follow him because I'm sort of on his
Of
trail.
course.
Ma'am?
Ladies first, anyways.
My name is Sheila Scott, and I've lived in Gulfstream since 1986. So I think that makes me qualified to speak for this wonderful neighborhood that I've loved and enjoyed. First of all, I'd like to tackle Lakeview. I've almost been killed there, I don't know how many times when I'm going out Lakeview to A1A and these service trucks are coming in. And they don't care who you are. They just mow you over and you have to get way up on those people's property over here, which is nothing but shrubs, and scratch your car all up. I was wondering if it could be turned into a one-way street where the only thing that can happen there is it goes out to A1A, not come in. The carpools also come in there and they take that curve like they're hell-bent for election. And you can be killed if you're coming up Gulf Stream Road and they come in like this, and that's happened also. That's why I support you on Lakeview. It's a disaster. Make it one way and let them go in one block and get out wherever they want to go. The other thing is, I'd love to see some of these projects that we've started get finished. I think I paid for the underground wiring, I don't know how many years ago. I'm still here to see it happen. I hope I'm still around to see it happen. I'm tired of waiting for it. Now I've got the sewer thing with all these pipes coming up under the ground all the way along. You don't see a nice lawn or anything. You see pipes, pipes, pipes. It's disgusting. I just would like to see some of the projects finished. I'm all for the things that you want to do. I don't think you'd have nearly as much trouble getting money and donations to see things being done. And we never hear anything about the wiring. We never hear anything about what's gonna happen about the water. And it's just all pie in the sky for us to wait until it's money and money might, you can get the money. We all have enough money. We just don't do it. We do it if it happens. Now, don't laugh at me. I'm serious. We've talked in the neighborhood and we know. You want the roads widened, you'll get your money. Make a plan, tell us what it's gonna cost, when it will be done, and when it will be finished. And you get the money. Believe me, you can laugh, but I'm telling you.
No, I apologize, I'm just not used to being around people who
Well,
say
you're
there's
not
plenty of
used to
money.
an old lady getting up.
No, I didn't say that at all. I
Right?
encourage you to do that, and I thank you to do that.
So that's all
Good
I have
comment,
to say.
thank
I
you.
admire you all, I love you all, and this guy right here, thank God we have him. I'll tell you, and his police force. They are a wonderful group of men, and we're very fortunate. And you all do a good job, but let's see things done and finished, and then ask us for money. I mean it. You'll see a big change. I hope you all agree with me.
Good evening, everybody. I know you guys should know me by now. If you don't, then we got issues. But for those of you who don't know me, my name's Julio Martinez. I live over in Plaza Soleil. And I think you really should inspect the water over there, Don, especially in my block. We've got Mr. O'Hare, Mr. Meyer, and Mr. Newman from the same, we were basically a rock throw from each other. So that block is really well represented. But really, all of you that are here tonight, I know you're here to make a positive difference. And I want to thank you for that. I'm, just a resident like you guys are. I used to be the president of the homeowners association over there. And one of the things I can share with you is the team we have in place, you guys have a lot of challenges based on some of the thoughts that you shared tonight. And all the challenges you have, I think, as far as I'm concerned, we've got the best team to overcome those challenges. Rita, as I've said before, Bill and Chief Ward, you guys aren't perfect. You guys are far from perfect, but I can't find anybody who's better than you guys are, so I wouldn't replace you. So, keep on doing a great job. Sometimes we take it for granted, all the great things you did as far as the town commission. Bob, like I said, when I grow up, I want to be like you. You guys are indispensable, all of you. And the efforts that you're putting in are just, words can't describe it. And I know it's a challenging job. I don't think you guys deserve a raise yet, but we have a lot of issues. But going back to some of the things that were talked about tonight, and some of the things that you said, when I was president, we were trying to get the front entrance changed. And Sandy can, share with you, it took us 3 years. But when it was all said and done, some of the homeowners came forward and said, hey, there are some homes that don't look the way we want them to look. We'll go ahead and we'll pay to have those homes fixed. So there's a lot of passion in this town. And I think there's more passion than there is not. And I can generally say that from obviously being in a position where I had the opportunity to interact with a lot of these homeowners, but also, you know, just being, ever since I got my Fitbit, having the opportunity of walking through every single block in Gulfstream, some more than others, but walking through every single block in Gulfstream, and when I walk around the whole town, I know you guys are challenging yourself, but I can't find a town that's better than this. I cannot find one that's better. And if you guys know of one, please let me know, because I'll start walking through there. Okay? Just find one, and I'll start walking there. In fact, I may even try and move there. But walking down every single street, talking to the homeowners, I see Dawn on the street sometimes, and you know, she's always trying to think of a better way that we can get things accomplished, and you know, that says a lot. Because you guys are near perfect right now. You're still trying to find ways to make yourselves better. If you got a barn to worry about, that's, you know, it's not a big deal. I'm sure the water main bill, you know, the outcomes, you guys can do lots of studies compared to other towns, and you know, like I said, and again, I want to reach out to you guys because I've had the opportunity to work with you folks, and you're in great hands. You're in great hands, and I challenge anybody, you know, who could find a better group than this, our police department. The facts are there, and they're not paying me to do this. You know, actually, this is coming from the heart. This is not a prepared speech. These guys are great, and I really just want to, you know, take the time to really go out and thank them and all of you that are here, because you know, it's all of us put together to make a positive difference.
Thank you,
So,
Mr.
that's it.
Martinez. Thank you very much for the words of support, sir.
My name is Miguel Neumann. I'm Julio's neighbor, just down the street. I have 2 issues to talk about, and none of them are costly or will cost us any money. But the main one is about pollution. We are subject and will be in the future to noise pollution, big time in our side of Gulfstream, Plaza Soleil, and it will come from the railroad. I don't know if any of my neighbors hear the hooting at night, but it starts around 3 and 4 in the morning when the trains come through our railroad crossings. They hoot like 4 times.
You know, why you're up so late at night?
I sleep like a log, but not my wife. She hears it. And in reality, I'm here for her, not for me. But as I'm an obedient husband, here I am. So, having said that,
we can hear the hoots over here too.
you do?
We can.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, because in this way, you may be able to help us all by putting a note into our senator or governor or whoever it is that might be able to silence those hootings by improving the barriers. There are ways, and I've seen it in Germany. You can tell by my accent that I'm not originally from here. You have to stop your car and turn off the engine when you come to a barrier that is closed, because there are houses all around those crossings, and you can't pollute the neighborhood with your exhaust. And also, there's nothing but a few lights coming on and off, and that's it. And there's the barrier. And there are technical means of making these crossings secure without having the trains hooting. So there are 2 things that will increase the noise. One is the beautiful, and we'll see what happens with that, All Aboard project, which wants to take 16 trains both ways every day to Orlando and fill them up with potential customers that are non-existent. We already have one system that goes once a day, and they don't fill it up. And the other one is the expansion of the Panama Canal, which will allow for very large ships to cross over from the Pacific to the Gulf, and then come to our port of Miami and load there and truck all the containers up north. So this will multiply by 100 the trains that come through now, and the noise will be unbearable. Not alone, and forget about having dinner in Del Rey downtown, because the tables will fly away. They're supposed to come through at 70 miles an hour there, and then 100 miles an hour elsewhere. So that's what I would like to present to you, and if you would be able to do something about it, it would be greatly appreciated. Okay?
Well, thank you.
So that's not gonna cost you anything. Now, I have a second request that won't cost you anything. But these two gentlemen who are sitting here already said no, but because I did this privately and now I'm doing it publicly. There's a stop sign at Plaza Soleil just before you go out onto Federal, which is at the corner and serves no purpose. But obviously, it's enforced. So you have to stop there for nothing, for no reason at all, and then carry on. It's a nuisance, serves no purpose, it's been there all the time, and it's supposedly protecting someone who would come from the left, which has to cross a double yellow line to get in front of you, which is prohibited, but that is not enforced. You got the picture? No? Okay. Can I make a drawing for you?
Well, actually, maybe,
You know where it is.
yeah, we know where,
It's the stop sign when you come to the boulevard of Plaza Soleil, when you are heading out, right?
there's a stoplight there.
There's a stop sign there.
Isn't there a traffic light
Okay,
there?
you're talking Cardinal and Avenue au Soleil.
It's the last, when you're leaving Plaza Soleil, there's only one stop, the last stop sign, that's there. It's right basically across from
Serves no
Mama's house.
purpose.
Yeah, it's not
And
on
I
Federal.
agree
It's
with him,
not
it really,
possible.
at the end of the day, you basically, like Miguel says, and he's an engineer, really, he's really efficient, he's not just saying things to say.
Thanks very much. I'll write you a check. Hang on.
No worries, we'll take care of you later. But, I feel this frustration because really, if you guys just take a look at it yourself. They're really, and Chief Ward would obviously know more about the dynamics behind it, and so would Bill, as I think I may have brought that up at one point too. It doesn't really serve any purpose when you're driving through there. It doesn't feel like, why am I stopping here? There's no traffic coming from any other direction. And if it is, it's like, they're obviously doing something wrong if they're coming in your direction, like Miguel said. So if you guys can look at that, it may obviously help efficiency, because we all have to exit there, we can't avoid it.
The purpose of the sign is, that's a blind corner. And people used to not stop at that corner, make the right turn and go into the oncoming lane.
Could they switch it to a yield, chief, and maybe it would be, where you can just gradually stop and at least kind of look out? Do you think that may be more practical?
No, the yield, you can't see until you go out into the intersection.
So you wouldn't have to cross the double line to go into the other lane,
Right,
because there's a double lane.
Just make a
You're
wide-
not supposed to cross that line,
well, I understand that.
and you're doing 20, because that's the speed
Well-
you're supposed to be doing in
You're
this.
supposed to be doing it.
Well, you know what, I'm doing it. I was warned once, and that's it.
Yeah, see, there you go.
So you have to warn more people, and then everybody's gonna be doing 20, and you have to get rid of the sign.
There is a safety issue there, and that's what
Well-
it was. We had-
Well, I don't see it.
Because before that sign went up, we had people complaining that they almost got hit coming in because people were making that turn and going in, they're not stopping, so they're going right around the corner and into the opposite lane.
Yeah, I assume it would not have been placed there without a reason.
Just look at it, please, again, and see what you can do. I would appreciate it.
In
Thanks very
the
much.
spirit of being, again, just maybe more efficient on looking at stuff, I think all of us that live there would probably share the same thoughts with you, and again, Chief, obviously we respect his opinion, but we would encourage you guys to just revisit it and look at it again and see maybe.
You just
just
said he was the
change-
best.
Yeah, and
He is the best.
I think.
But I told him he's not perfect either.
I'm not so sure this is a commission decision. This is a safety issue and it should be handled by the police department. And I think that's where the responsibility lies.
Whatever happened about the olive board? I know you guys were thinking of
We,
maybe doing a,
We had a
Resolution.
resolution here. That resolution was expanded upon in Del Rey, where it really has more teeth, because the train goes, there's 11 crossings in Del Rey. And the funding for the quiet zones, which is your issue, is in place. And it comes from a different source than All Aboard Florida. It comes from your gasoline tax. You pay for it when you put gas in your car. And so the money is in place, and virtually all of the crossings in Palm Beach County will become quiet zones. Unfortunately, I don't know whether the Walmart crossing is one of them, because that's not a primary road, although you could argue it's our way to the hospital, so it ought to be. But Christine, I think you know the answer to that. I believe that Boynton Beach has secured a quiet zone for that crossing as well. No more tooting once that's up and running.
Great.
so all aboard's happening?
All Aboard has, next event is on the 28th of May, when the financing capability for the $1.75 billion that they intend to borrow will be voted on by a board selected by the governor to determine whether or not they can support the financing. They are a conduit. An investment banking firm will sell the bonds, and it'll be shoved through this so-called conduit to people in the state of Florida. It's a Florida state law.
Well, I thought All Aboard Florida was a private deal.
It is. But in order to get the financing, which is gonna be special purpose bonds, they have to get the approval of a board in the state of Florida. And the people who are opposing All Aboard Florida are gonna lobby on the 28th of May, big time. And if they are not successful and they decide to go ahead, they're then gonna sue them. So you can rest assured that this thing ain't gonna happen overnight, because there are an awful lot of people with a vested interest in keeping All Aboard Florida calm until such time as all the issues have been dealt with. And then they're a long way from that now.
We only have a few more minutes, so I don't want to deny anyone the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Nancy Wigglesman. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for everything you do. I know that's been said, but I just can't help but saying we all appreciate greatly the time you put in. We recognize that you're not being paid for it, the commission isn't, and it's a gift to all of us. So thank you. Second of all, I think of all the things we discussed, and this is someone who lives in California half the year, so naturally I have a different view than a lot of people, but water's probably the most important one. And I know you all have proposed a mill rate increase. My request, and that will probably make me very unpopular, is that you increase it by another half a mill rate, and that entire amount be set aside for repairing our water pipes. Because I think it's going to be a critical issue, and even more so as time goes by. Fire and rescue, I think we should have a percentage of our budget that gets put aside for that, because I think there's no question about the fact that the first time a friend or a neighbor dies, because the sheriff's department has taken it over and in the traffic, they don't get here in time, people are going to be livid, and we need to have a plan and a timeline in place for that, rather than continuing to discuss it. We've already, as I think you said, raised the money for the study. Let's have a deadline for completing it, possibly, or not completing it, but at least having it underway by the time everybody comes back in September, and hopefully completing it within 4 months after that. With respect to the seawall, obviously that's critical. I applaud Patsy for saying that we should have someone walk the ocean, and probably the intercoastal too, to at least assess what the situation is, so that if we have a serious problem, we're aware of it. I don't know whether or not this is legal or something we want to consider, but perhaps we should make seawall maintenance mandatory for the people who, and the buildings who have a seawall, that if it's in terrible shape, we have some sort of fine or something if people don't take steps to take care of their property. And just coming into, I didn't want to say, yes, bringing Gulfstream into the next century. We're spending a lot of money on undergrounding. I understand that it's not your fault that it hasn't been done. It's actually the fault of AT&T. I also understand that they don't view our town as a top priority, and we keep pushing, and it's the best we can do, and I invite you to keep trying and try even harder. But the concern is, we're spending all this money to do this, and yet, we're way behind the times as far as internet speed goes. Isn't there some possibility that we could be laying fiber optics simultaneously, or something along those lines? Could someone, once again, please speak with whoever's laying the lines, that we strongly consider that? And then just a little plug for the Florida Coalition for Preservation. One of our biggest projects has been encouraging people to be aware of the importance of dunes and maintain them. And I would love to see the town take a stand on that, and further encourage our citizens who have beachfront property to be mindful of it and do what they can to improve our dunes, and perhaps even on our website include information on things that individuals and buildings can do that will improve them, because it'll benefit the entire town in case of a hurricane. Thank you again.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate all your thoughts. Well, it's 7 o'clock, and that's all we have time. I'm happy to speak with people at the conclusion of the meeting, as any of the commissioners would be, but I'm afraid we have to terminate at 7 o'clock. Sure. I thank you all very much for coming, and hopefully see you next commission. Adjourned.
Thank you.